We're live? Okay, everyone. The meeting is live.
All right. Come on, people.
We need the gavel. All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for coming. I'm just going to get us started off before I hand it over to Sarah. So this is our agenda for tonight. So we're going to do introductions of everyone. And Sarah, do you want to take over and introduce yourself, and then everybody can go around?
Sure. So I'm starting with a disclaimer that this is a continuation of last year's, what should have happened at the conclusion of last year's budget committee, which was the electing of the chair/chairs for this year's committee. So I'm only speaking on behalf of my role from last year, which is to say their first order of, and so there are more welcomes and code of conducts and all those great things, but we have to first decide who we want to have as to be chair of the committee. I will put out there in the office, Jill and I have talked and met, and we are open and willing to do it again as co-chairs, but I'm going to put it out to the entirety of the group. And is anybody online, or
Do we have anyone on Zoom? Okay.
is there a way to pull up their, yeah.
Can we nominate you and Jill to be re-nominated or reissued or re-elected?
Yes.
Okay, I nominate you and Jill to be,
I told you this was going to happen.
continue the same roles.
Okay. I guess.
You need to be a volunteer, or you weren't, if you weren't here.
Yeah.
Then you get it.
Right. Well, Jill's not here. She's at a soccer game, but we agreed to be a package deal to go forward. But so are we gonna do official count of?
Do you want to, before they do the election of a chair, do we want to go around and introduce everyone so everybody knows who
yeah.
committee members are and select board members and staff and all that?
I'll start. Ray Andresen. This is my second year on the budget committee. I don't know what else what else do you want?
Perfect.
Okay.
Chris Nolan, Select Board.
Peter Ornigan, second year this time around on the budget committee.
Sophie Romana, Select Board, but former Budget Committee member. So beware where the Budget Committee leads you.
I'm Audra Kaler. I'm the town manager.
I'm Jody Hanson, the Finance Director.
Mark Ratner, new to the Budget Committee this year.
Mary Beth Anthony Thomas, second year on the Budget Committee.
Sarah Scrivenich, fourth year on the budget committee, and now soon to be second year of co-chair.
Andy Scrivenich, fourth year.
We're married.
Hey everyone, I'm Matt Wolf. I'm new to the budget committee this year. I'm also an alternate on the planning committee, I believe.
Hey everybody,
Go ahead, Tom. Sorry.
it's from, can you see me?
Yes.
Okay, you can, yeah, chairman of the select board.
So
Madam
Audra,
Courtney, you can't see me because I'm eating right now, and I know I shouldn't be doing that on Zoom, so I didn't put my video on, but I think this is my third year on the select board, not select board, I'm sorry, on the budget committee, and yeah, that's it.
so what's our quorum? Is that everybody on the phone?
So 6 is a quorum, and I
Okay.
think that we have 8.
Okay, so we're good.
We're good. So do you want to move on to election of the chair?
Yeah, so I guess I will reserve in our so delicately planned future budget to just, I think next time we meet, it would be worthwhile just to go over code of conduct, rules of engagement, just some general pleasantries in a pleasant world. So I will reserve that for when Jill and I are together, because we have lots of meetings coming up and lots of ideas. Okay.
I will second Mark's motion
Oh,
on chairs. for the year.
So all in favor? So unanimous in the
Can we
room?
move that?
And then,
No.
Audra, can you read names online? Because my eyes are not as.
Yeah, so Matthew
Yeah.
is a yes.
And
Courtney, I think she,
Yes,
yep, she's a
okay.
yes.
unanimous.
Okay,
Unanimous.
all right.
And
Yay.
Janice, do you want to bring up my screen again so they can see the agenda?
I can just do one of those, throw like a thumbs up in the chat for that.
That's perfect. Okay, so I'm passing it over.
All right. So prior to this meeting, I met with Sarah and Jill, and we talked about a few process changes. And I also spoke to the select board about this as well. So I'm just going to bring up a few. So we did the introductions. So a few of the process changes. It just has felt over the past few years really compressed to try and not only go over the budget, but explain pretty much all of the town operations from, sort of beginning to end and, talk about future challenges and also talk about the, the year ahead and the budget process. So we thought that having some meetings and, last week was supposed to be the first one. So from October to January, where we do the basic things where we sort of go over what the departments do, some of the challenges that they're facing, some of the, long-term planning that they're looking at. That might be a better way of just making the process a little bit more, less compressed in that month of March, and just gives everybody a little bit more breathing room to kind of understand the basics of how the town functions and what we have ahead of us, so that when we get to the part where we're actually talking about the budget, we can have a better conversation about that. So we thought that would be, a really important way to structure this. I think that, in addition to the meetings where we're talking about the departments, also some sort of facilities tour would be a good thing as well, because there are a lot of different, places or projects or things that we talk about in the course of this. And, I think that some people are very familiar with certain parts of town and certain, projects that we're talking about, but other people are less familiar. So I think that organizing that might be a really helpful way to give sort of context to what we're talking about. So we can talk about that a little bit later and organizing that in a way that works for everyone.
And I was just going to add in terms of, most of us were here last year in terms of what we tried to fit in, the longevity of those meetings and brain capacity at the end of those long days. So we also thought by spreading it out and truncating the actual sessions to 2-hour sessions, if we go over, we're not going into hour 4. And it also means that we have a little more wiggle room. So we're trying to keep them to 2-hour sessions.
Yes, very important, because no one makes great decisions after 9:00. So we thought a workshop in January would be really important to talk about things like, capital planning and, our debt picture and the outlook on that. Also giving, committees that had projects that they wanted to pitch the opportunity to come in and explain what they're working on and what they would like the budget committee and the select board to consider in the year ahead. And same thing with, the departments and the select board and the budget committee being able to talk about, some priorities for the year ahead and what everybody sees as important. So we thought that January workshop would be a really good way of sort of getting us ready for the budget preparation work that we need to do in February. It just means that we're more informed going into it and everybody's on the same page in terms of priorities and, the sorts of things that you'd like to see in the budget. And then March will be our normal budget review meetings, and we'll really get to just sort of dig into the budget and less sort of background information and education during then. Another important change that we talked about was that the budget review meetings would really be joint meetings between the select board and the budget committee, because I think that that's been another piece of this that everybody feels like there's a little bit of a disconnect where there can't be sort of an ongoing dialogue between the budget committee and the select board about, different elements of the budget and, what fits in with their priorities, or if the budget committee has a question of the select board or vice versa. It just hasn't really been set up well to have that dialogue between the two groups. So
And I,
that's.
and I think we preface it by saying, and again, we can kind of go through this, that the budget committee and the cohesiveness of our group and our ability to have discussions and debates, it is still primary, but having members and the select board present and available for those questions and to kind of keep it less of what's going to happen once the big unveiling will make it, hopefully less frustrating.
Absolutely. So does anybody have any questions about any of that? No? All right, so Sarah, I'll hand this sort of over to
Excuse
you.
me, one question. How many departments are we going to be visiting and how much time is really allocated for that? I mean, you're talking about starting, and we're in November already.
So we didn't really want to do, after thinking about it a little bit more, I thought the department tours, I know they're fun, but they're not necessarily very informative or educational. I think that it would be more of going around to certain sites in town where there's like a project or there's an issue or there's an upcoming decision that needs to be made. So I think
Okay.
that that's something that we can plan to do in like an afternoon or, when I like,
Can you toss off about 2 or 3 or 4 different locations that you're viewing as the ones that we should go see?
right now.
Yeah, if you just off the top of your head, not going to keep you committed to it, but which ones are you thinking that we should go see? The Snowball, one of them?
I would say, yep, I'd say the Snowball would probably be one of them. I think there's like a couple of streets where we're talking about doing projects that it would be good for everyone to see. I think that I was going to say a few of you've done the dams tour already,
Right.
but I think there could be other, locations around the river where things are coming up.
What about the public landing?
The public landing would be a good place to go to. So I think that kind of,
I mean,
That
that
kind of
may
tour.
not be a big number on this year's budget, but as far as coming budget, but it's going to be coming up big
Right.
time in the
Right.
future. Okay.
yes.
What was on, I didn't see what the next slide was.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, the rules of order stuff from before. So if nobody wants to tackle that tonight, there's going to be plenty of other meetings where you talk about, you have the opportunity to talk about rules of order. Just thought I'd bring it up and
Anybody feel like it's fresher to talk about rules of order tonight, or can we?
we can,
Huh?
We're gonna get it in advance, maybe, and let's go over.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah, right, yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. So maybe what we can agree to is we can distribute these,
Mhm.
in addition to the other slides, to the budget committee.
yes, so that's a good point. So I'm going to start this early. So you know how for the past couple of years, the folks who are coming back, we had area on the website under the news feed. It was like the budget information center, and we posted all the presentations and we had links to all the Zoom meetings and any, I think the budget itself, like the draft version of it was there. So I'll do that again, and that'll be sort of starting tomorrow. This will be the first thing that gets posted.
Okay.
And I'll send copies around to all of you as well.
And maybe it's helpful just between posting those and our next meeting in terms of email communication and correspondence. Just general communication rule is anything that wants to be communicated to the rest of the budget committee should be siphoned through Jill and myself. We will not hold it and, put it in the dump file, but just so we could disseminate it, do some outreach and get some information back. So just to keep that line of communication.
Yes, thank you, Sarah. All right, so I guess park the rules of order, but I think talking a little bit about roles and responsibilities is an important thing to do because we all sort of have different pieces in this depending on who we are, whether we're a staff person, if you're on the budget committee, or if you're on the select board, or even voters. So for me and the staff, we really are the first touch point. So we prepare the initial budget that gets submitted to the budget committee for review. And then we also prepare the schedule for all these meetings. We administer all the meetings. We get background information for everybody. The budget message and all the other narrative information around the budget, that's all of our responsibility as well. So, once that first draft of the budget is prepared, which is my budget, so the town manager's budget, it goes to the budget committee for the review process. So, you know, like we said, this year it's a little bit different in that, you know, you're going to meet before the budget's actually prepared to do a lot of the background prep work and to get a good understanding of sort of what's going on in town and how that might impact the budget. But also meeting during March to go over what the content of the budget is, to try to understand what it means in terms of, you know, service delivery and programs and that sort of thing. And your job is to make recommendations to the select board so they can do their budget deliberations. So the good thing about, you know, changing the process a little bit this year is that the select board is going to be very involved in your review as well. So you'll be able to ask them questions as you're going. They'll be able to ask questions of you. There'll be an opportunity for more, you know, collaboration in what the final product is. And so, you know, once you've made your recommendations and you've voted on your version of the budget, it goes to the select board. So their responsibility is to meet and review that version of the budget. They also accept public comment on the proposed budget in more of a formal way than the budget committee does. So I think, you know, to make the point, all of your meetings are public as well. And there might be members of the public that want to come in and they might want to talk to you. And really that's all something that as a committee, you can decide if you want to allow for opportunities for public comment or, you know, what kind of process you want around that. But just so we're all clear, every single meeting that all of us have, they're all public, they're all advertised. So with the select board, they have that very formal acceptance of public comment on the proposed budget. And their job is to approve the final version of the budget that goes on the ballot for voter approval. And then the very last stage of the process is the budget gets put on the June ballot during the June elections for voter approval. So that's kind of the whole process from beginning to end. And I know a lot of you were here last year, so you're familiar with that. But I guess anybody who might not be so familiar with the process, do you have any sort of questions on this and how it works?
Not a question. I guess I think of it a little differently. I think the more of a circle. To me, it starts with the select board setting goals. If that's not true here, and then your budget then kind of reflects those goals and kind of put those goals into numbers.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of different ways.
So
you
it
can-
kind of starts with that piece of it. And I'm curious, in the process that I'm used to, the select board in this case, or the school board in my case, kind of gives an idea from administration what, you know, like what a baseline status quo budget might look like, and then has feedback and input onto what the goals might be in terms of, you know, tax impact or increases. Is that part of this process, or do you just how do I
go about it?
How do you kind of
So
create your budget?
So I work with the department heads. We kind of throughout the year, I'll have my list going of, issues or priorities that have come up. And I guess like, we'll talk about this a little bit later, but I don't just budget for 1 year. Like that's just not how it works. We're always building on previous years and we're always sort of positioning ourselves for future years. So the way that I look at it, it's very much a continuation of, the entire time that I've been here and all the work that people have done before me to try to figure out, okay, at this point in time, what are the real priorities? And that could be based on a few different things. It could be operational needs. They could be needs that have arisen in the community, or they could be priorities as defined by, the select board and with input that they've gotten from the broader community. So, there's sort of a lot that goes into, what we sort of come up with for a first draft of the budget. But it really starts with, myself and the department heads sort of taking all those inputs and coming up with our sort of best first draft. And then, it gets put through the additional, process with the budget committee and the select board of narrowing in on what are the most important priorities.
And my last question is a technical question that you made me think of. Being completely a public process, and are we required to have FOIA training? So all of us should need to go online and do that training and submit
Yes.
some kind of form to you to?
Yeah, and Janice, I think, sends it all out to everybody
Okay.
and organizes that, if you haven't done it already. I think most people do it their first year.
I
Every year.
think it's-
Could you explain more about that? Because sorry, this is Courtney. I don't know if you guys can still see me. But I don't recall that training. I don't think I've ever done that.
Okay, well, so-
I may have, but I don't remember.
So it's the Freedom of Access Act training. And it's really like the training that's required for budget committees is very different than like the training for elected officials. I think that there's like a page on, I think is it the Secretary of State's office or some state? Yeah, Janice will send the link. Yeah, and you, sorry, I think, is Matt trying to speak?
Yeah, no, sorry, I wasn't quick enough on I should wait for my raise hand button. Yeah, I apologize. I didn't step on it. Go ahead.
That's okay. Yeah, so Janice will send the link around, but the training for budget committee purposes is reading through the Freedom of Access Act requirements. And it's basic stuff. When we go over some of it, it's things like, Sarah was saying where if you have like a question or any sort of email that you want to write in your capacity as a budget committee member to the entire group, you just have to, make sure that you're aware that in your capacity as a budget committee member, all of your emails are public and they're discoverable by, the FOAA. So if anybody were to request, I want to see budget committee member emails between these dates, you would be asked to produce them. So it's just knowing what your obligations are in terms of, public records and producing public records as it relates to your participation on this committee.
Right. So therefore, what you're saying is that any communication, emails that we send can't be just to the chairs of this committee. It has to be to the entire committee, and who else?
No, not necessarily. You just
okay.
have to, you just have to keep in mind that any emails that you send as a budget committee member
Mhm.
are publicly,
Oh, okay.
yeah,
Right.
they're public
So we
documents.
personally don't have to make it accessible to everybody, but it is public knowledge for everybody.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's a good way of putting
Okay.
it.
Is it possible to get like a budget committee chairman email that like has Jill and I, and then like a budget committee, email address that has everybody included, so that every time we're emailing, we're not having to remember, and then there's Ray, and then there's, it's just
Yeah, we could do a
distribution. Yeah, if we could do a
distribution list.
distribute, yeah,
Yep.
that would be great.
Definitely. All right. I'm gonna write this down in case. Okay, thanks. Thanks, Jody. All right. And did somebody have a question?
No, I'm okay. I think
Okay.
you guys we're good.
Great.
And did I hear correctly that was Matt saying that he's an alternate, and is that?
No, he's an alternate, I think, on the
Oh,
planning board.
gotcha. Okay, I was like, come on down. 'cause
No,
we don't-
he's
we
a
don't have to be-
full-on budget committee member.
No, I'm full of them, yeah.
Okay, got it.
All right. So just another thing in terms of roles and responsibilities. So fortunately for everyone here, the budget committee is not a finance committee, which I know for some people like Ray, that might be a bit of a bummer because I know he's good at that kind of stuff. Well, Pete as well. But for other members of the committee, I think that's a positive thing because you don't have to have financial expertise and knowledge. Really, your job is focused on levels of service and giving feedback on whether or not the levels of service that are being delivered in any particular department, if you feel like they meet the needs of the community or not. So, really you're looking at the budget, but like I said, this is not just sort of like a single year in time. We're looking at the past and building off things that have been set up for the past, as well as looking to the future and what are the future needs going to be. So you're really high level. You're setting the goals and allocating resources for what we want to do. You're making sure that the things that we're funding align with some of these broader strategic priorities that we're hopefully going to be talking about in the next few sessions when we have department heads in talking about the work that they're doing and the needs that they see in the community, and you're all giving input into what you see as being the, the challenges that Camden's facing and the things that we need to be preparing for. And you're also prioritizing, how we distribute our financial resources. And that's a really important strategic role that fortunately having, it's not as important to have financial background to do that as it is somebody who's interested in public policy and interested in the future of the community and what our community looks like. Whereas like if this were a finance committee, it would be the oversight of, financial operations and how that's managed. And, really we have Jody for that, and we have auditors that, support that work as well. So, really the budget committee, you've got like a much broader role that is really, really important. And it's something that we can't, as staff people who are doing those sort of, more day-to-day management of the finances of the town, we can't have as rich or, sort of deep input into what the needs are in the community as a group of residents who live here and, who are going to be using these services. Sorry, Janice, do you want me to?
We're trying to get it so we can show the slides and
Yes.
the faces, of the individuals, not the faces. So we can.
Yeah, I just gotta mute myself.
I think if you share your screen on the Zoom.
Yeah.
For some reason.
There. Thank you.
I don't know, I can still hear myself.
You can still. I can't see the screen. Oh, I was trying to get on Zoom so I could see the screen. Now I have to sit my mark.
Sorry, I'm just trying to figure out why my,
That's why I can't see. My back is turning down.
it's all off.
You know what? It's your mic.
Budget preparation and approval, especially in a town like Camden, it's really the single, this is kind of crazy making. I don't understand why I can hear myself.
No, turn off the volume.
It is off.
Not the volume, not the mic.
They're both off. All right, I'm just going to keep going. All right, so the budget preparation is really important because it really sets up, what services we're going to be delivering, what projects we're going to be doing for the year ahead. And so it affects everybody in Camden. And it really has a lot of different purposes. So, it's an accounting document, so it's really important for Jody and I to make sure that we're controlling expenditures, and we have a good idea of, what we're spending and how much we're spending on different services. So, keeping control of the finances, it's really important to, be sticking to our budget. It's also important for decision-making. So, decisions that the select board is going to make in the year ahead and town staff are going to make in the year ahead are really set by the budget, and trying as best as we can to stick to the budget. And it also communicates with the public about what the priorities are that we're going to be spending town funds on. So for the budget committee, again, you're really important because you're giving us input on what the values of the town are. So what you say we should be spending funds on is really important for defining as a community what our principles are and what our goals are and what we want to be in the future and how we want this community to function in the future. You're also helping us address the needs and wants of the community and balancing the ability of the community to pay for those services. So, you know, everybody finds going through this process that there are going to be so many more things that we'd all like to do and like to see happen in Camden, but it's very limited by, we're just really going to have to prioritize because we can't do everything that everybody's going to want us to do. Budget committee, you're also implementing policy. So, you know, there's going to be different initiatives that are handed down from the select board, different committees that are working on things. However, most policies take some level of funding to implement them. And the budget committee is going to be really important in helping to prioritize what actually does get implemented. And you also help communicate. So every single one of you has a network of friends, neighbors, and other community members that you talk with. And by talking about your involvement with the town on the budget committee, you're helping us get the word out about what it is the town is prioritizing and doing and what the goals are for the future. And I think that's incredibly important because, you know, as much as the town tries to get to different types of media sources, whether it be, you know, social media or local newspapers, it's really not as important or as effective as the conversations that people have in the community with each other, particularly people that they trust. So I think that, you know, helping us to communicate about this is a really important thing that you all do. And I'm sure some of you don't even realize that, you know, that's a role that you've kind of taken on or it's something that you're doing. All right, so to get to some things that before, I'm sorry, this is just crazy.
It is. If you look,
It's in somebody has.
or on the screen, the it's not muted on the yeah.
I know, I don't understand because the sound is off.
See if you can like remute it.
Here's Jen, move that mic and start doing it. We'll just turn it off.
Audra, can I ask a logistics question while you're doing that?
Yeah.
Which,
That's not it.
it's we're just testing the sound.
This is so strange. I don't see how sound can be coming from this.
That's what I'm saying. Because like everyone else on Zoom, it looks like they're muted, but the one that's showing the room is not. So I'm just wondering.
Because this is this.
That's because it's that one. Okay, gotcha.
That's this computer.
Okay,
All right.
this is going to be it. I could feel it. So can I ask the logistics question then? Shoot. I'm going to ask it anyway.
Don't share it until we figure out.
Okay.
Do you want to just flip it back and forth? Yeah. We'll ask Gina to keep looking into it next week. Well, it's my laptop, so maybe. Yeah.
So if you're on Zoom and you have a question, you're going to have to speak up because we won't be able to see you. Just letting. And then Audra, now I'm going to ask you my question as soon as it turns on. Okay, I'll stop talking.
Do I just need to leave, Janice? Yeah, no, it's a Zoom thing. All right, so.
So Audra, quick question.
Mhm.
So just again, in terms of, well, we'll go into important considerations, but I know some of the feedback last year, especially when we got into like timelines and people and resources and things like, in terms of this room tonight and knowing that there's individuals, I just want to be mindful of if there's pieces that are involving folks that are working overtime to do stuff, that we're prioritizing that versus logistics. I just want to mention that because I think that was something from last year. So
Yeah, I kind of warned them about tonight that I'll do the overview and then we'll get into,
Okay.
a
Okay.
few different departments.
gotcha.
They're here for,
I apologize. I have a hard stop at the top of the hour. That's a scheduling conflict on my part. I apologize. I'll be more ready for a 2-hour meeting next time.
oh, no worries. No
So
worries.
if there's anything you need me for, maybe you can bump it to the front as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And if there's anything that you want to follow up on after this, and that same goes for anyone in the room, you can always reach out to us directly about it. All right, so important considerations. So and I've already said this 2 other times, but third time's a charm. So I don't think of this as a singular year that we're preparing a budget for. We're building off a prior year's foundation and then also creating a platform for future years.
Would you
Um,
reshare your screen with us just so we could see it?
Oh,
Thank you.
yes. Actually, Janice has to do it.
Hi, Courtney. No, I'm just kidding. We'll miss seeing you.
All right, so I'll just keep talking and then you'll. Yeah. All right, so the town's a service delivery organization. So, what's that? Okay. We're just going through all of them tonight.
Keep going.
All
The
right.
slides will appear if they do. If they
They
don't,
will.
they're going to be made available on the website
Yes.
within the next week.
And they're really just a prompt for me to speak from. All right, so the town's a service delivery organization. So any significant spending cuts are service cuts, where any significant spending increases are service increases. I just think this is a really, really important point that everybody has to understand, because that is the core of what we do. The majority of our budget is personnel. The other half of the budget that isn't personnel are all the materials and tools and other equipment that are needed by people to do their jobs. And we deliver services. We deliver a broad array of services. So it's not like, a business with a singular focus. It's like 10 businesses under one umbrella that do very, very different things. And that's part of the beauty and the horror that is local government. So another thing, as we go through this process, because what you're bringing to the table is input on levels of service and the types of services. So keep asking yourself, is this service important for the community and is it worth the cost? Everything that we do, just keep asking yourself that question. And also another thing, non-tax-based revenues or fees for services, they can offset the impacts of increasing the levels of services or offering new services. So, different revenues that the town can bring in are going to help with keeping property taxes stable. But in practice, residents really don't like paying for things that they feel like should be free. Nothing is free, though. So if you're not paying through your taxes or property tax increases, it's got to be paid for another way, and it's got to be a fee for service. So everything that we do has a cost to it, even if it seems like it's embedded in your property tax bill, it still has a cost. All right, so some.
Can I suggest something?
Yeah.
Can you just use your mic? Oh, yeah, sorry. So there are different ways. So we can, to fund the budget, there's taxes, there's non-tax revenue, like fees and services. There's also debt, right?
Yes.
And there are grants. So that's, and I'm looking at Jody to make sure I'm not saying something stupid. So in our toolbox of income, these are the four types of income, correct? Taxes, fees, grants, debt. But I mean,
Subsidiary type revenue, but those are the main.
right.
Yeah, they can all go in those 4 buckets. So it's, but I would even say with debt, debt service, we have to pay for the debt service through
Right.
taxes.
Right.
So yeah, but those are kind of the 4 buckets of funding sources.
And not unofficially or however, but I think also building in more clarity on shared intertown shared services, I feel like could be better explained and brought up front in terms of it's costing this, but there's reimbursement from other towns. 'Cause I
Yeah.
think that would paint a different picture in terms of what the overall impact is. And that's, yeah, so just to make a note.
Good point. Yeah, and also, if anybody has anything like that you want to chime in, that's really helpful, because there are certain things that, you know, we can take for granted by virtue of the fact that, you know, we've been kind of doing this year after year, that we don't realize is something that's really important for all of you to know. So if there's anything like that any of you have, please let me know, because the more that we can sort of explain this stuff up front, the better the conversation is going to be when we get to the budget process.
One quick thing on that, which you just brought up, is, okay, I understand, like with the police chief and others, where we're sharing them with other towns. Is there any equipment that we're sharing with other towns and the expense of them, or the purchases for new equipment? Is there anything that, okay,
Oh, yes, yeah.
Okay.
Each shared department with, for example, Rockport, we do work together for grants, and we share costs based on percentage for each town, yeah.
All right, so some basics about our budget. So most of you are familiar with looking through the numbers. So it's a line item budget. They're really common for local government and most governments. So it's really good at connecting and reporting on information and grouping things together. Really good for, you know, like with Jody and I being able to oversee and control spending. But it's not really great in terms of, you know, flexibility or even sometimes being able to show priorities, because, you know, there'll be certain priorities or projects that people will want to see reflected in the budget. And sometimes, unless you have really good working knowledge of how our budget is set up, it can be hard to, you know, find the place where, you know, you're looking for the project or the program or whatever it is that has been talked about as a priority. So that can be some of the challenges with, you know, the more traditional line item budgets.
So then maybe I would recommend that as we're thinking about what the budget review would look like, if there are specific initiatives, you know, entities or things that you would want, you know, to see highlighted or touched upon as a budget committee, maybe we can filter that to you guys, and then that could, again, just so that some attention can be brought and raised versus, like, I know poor Jody, I know when you're behind your 3 screens and in the moment, like doing your, you know, on the fly, like, piece, it'd be nice if we can give you that ahead of time so that we can call it out. Doesn't negate bringing things up in the moment, but at least if you have it on top of mind, we can do that.
Great. All right. So another thing, we have 4 distinct budgets. So the one that you'll spend most of your time on, and that at the end of the day, you're responsible for, you know, providing recommendations to the select board that get carried through the budget process I went through earlier, is the general fund budget. So that contains all the municipal services that are funded by property taxes. We also have 3 special revenue funds. We have the wastewater special revenue fund, the Snow Bowl, and the Opera House. And there is some level of property tax support for all of these in different ways. But really, at the end of the day, these budgets are set up like with wastewater. You know, the expenses are going to equal the revenue that we bring in from user rates for that are charged for wastewater customers. You know, at the Snow Bowl, the expenses will be theoretically covered by the operations of the Snow Bowl and what they bring in through their different streams of business there. Again, you know, it's not perfect. There are years where, you know, the Snow Bowl might not meet its budget targets and the town needs to support it. There are other years where there's a little bit of a, they exceed their revenue projections. The Opera House is a little bit different in that, the town provides a lot of their operational support, but we've pulled it out as its own special revenue fund so we can better show, how the Opera House functions and its different lines of business, whether it be the rental revenue funds or the productions themselves and the expenses associated with it all. So really pulling the Opera House out, we felt that was a way to be more transparent about the Opera House's functions and, the finances associated with it. So there are other considerations as well. So we received a lot of grant funding through the town of Camden. However, that is not factored into the general fund. So, we're happy to talk about grants and give you information on it, but they're all treated as special revenue funds and they're not included in the general fund budget or anything that we're going to be talking about. They are very important though, because they do offset, the impact of financial impact of doing projects that we would normally have to fund through property taxes. We can offset the impact of by funding through grants. Another important thing to know about Camden Public Library is 50% privately funded, and its budget really sits outside of the general fund. So the part of the library budget that you see as a line in the general fund budget is just the support that the town of Camden provides to Camden Public Library. They have their own budget, and 50% of it is funded through the fundraising that they do. Also, the school districts and the county budget, though combined, that's 70% of your property tax bill. That's completely separate from our municipal budget, and they're handled through their own respective budget processes.
Can I interject an idea here or whatever? I think it'd be very helpful, even though we don't have any control over the school budgets and the county budget. But if you notice in today's paper, the preliminary Knox County budget is going up 21%. Is it possible for Jody to give us in some sheet just like a 5-year back history of how much of an increase those three budgets, the school budgets and the county budgets have been, so that when we're looking at what our budget tax increase is going to look like, we can at least say, okay, this is where this is all going to hit the taxpayers, all three of them. Let's see where we fit in there.
Sure. Yep.
So you're
Okay.
looking for county and school?
County and the two school budgets. Yeah. Yeah. Just so we see, and say, hey, look at, we can tell the taxpayers, at least the town's increase is historically less, or I'm not even sure. I don't know what the numbers will reflect and everything, but historically less than what the school budgets are hitting you with.
Yep. That's easy for us to show you.
So Ray, what do you think? Like trailing 3 years, 5 years? What was
I think a
it?
5-year, because we won't know what the ones are for this year when we're looking at this. We won't know what they're at the moment. No, right. We can always plug the numbers in if we get them.
We'll know by March.
The school budget?
And the county will be soon.
Well, do we
We
really
can-
know?
we can still
do
give
we
you the
really know what I'm
historical.
sorry, do we really know what the school budget's going to be for the next year in March? How come it's not on the ballot in June then?
Because the
You have to put your mic on.
budget-
I think the timing is,
Because the school budget is not actually approved by ballot.
Right.
It's actually approved at town meeting.
Yeah.
So it's actually a public meeting that the budget is approved, and then
Okay.
the referendum is just a validation.
all right, I stand corrected.
And I've got 10 years, I'll give you. I've got 10 years, I'll give you.
Oh, thank you. You're gonna make my life easier.
I could probably email it to you right now.
All right. So just to talk about the chart of accounts a little bit, and my apologies that it is so small, but you're going to get a copy of this, so you'll be able to look through it. So this is really just how we structure the budget. So, like we have the general government section, and, within that sits administration and finance. So that's like the town manager's office, Jody's staff, professional services, the planning, code enforcement, assessing office, our IT budget, all of our insurances, the town office building. So this is what it looked like last year and how it was structured. We're gonna, and we talked about this quite a bit last year because we changed, the Opera House and how that was reflected in the budget. We went from, the Opera House sort of being embedded in the general fund budget to, like we said, it's a special revenue fund now. And we've made a couple other consolidations and changes, none that I think will be as confusing as that, but we have sort of chunked a few things together. Like I think most notable will be Public Works. So that budget, it used to be sort of one area that was sort of all the staff and the equipment for the sort of day-to-day operations of the department. And then there was a whole separate budget that was I think it was all of like the supplies, like or all the major supplies like paving and salt and money to do small sidewalk projects and stuff like that. We just combined it into one because I think that was really confusing for everybody, and it was sort of like an unnecessary distinction between the two. Same thing with culture and recreation services. There was a parks budget and a recreation budget, and year after year, everybody was like, what is the difference between the two? And we try to explain, and even Beth and Jody and I were kind of like, we don't really, this is a historical thing. So we've put those together, and we've made some other, rearrangements that we thought would be more logical and easier for everybody to follow. And you'll be able to sort of look at all of that when I send you the presentation. Unfortunately, unless you have like really, really good eyesight, you probably can't see it now. No, it's not. I put it onto a PowerPoint slide, which is probably not wise.
I have just an idea to put out to the committee to think about for some of the upcoming meetings. I'd be interested, and again, I want us to gather our thoughts as a committee, but I feel like it would be interesting and important to pick a couple of case studies from things that were put forward as initiatives last year into last year's budget of what some of the things we discussed. Again, maybe we can just brainstorm of like things that jump out at us that it'd be good to just go back and be like, so this is what was put into the budget. This is what the initiative was. Where did we actually come out in that? And how did that measure against what we had? And again, I'd like to hear from others in the committee offline of just like things that might be of interest. So, okay.
Yeah, that would be great. So some jargon and frequently used terms. And after I go through these, please feel free to, throw out any others because I'm sure that there are other ones we're missing. So I'll talk about TIFs every now and then. Those are tax increment financing districts. So the town of Camden has 2 of those. And really a TIF district is a defined geographic area where the new property taxes, or a portion of the new property taxes, but for our TIF districts, I think one is 50%, one's 100%. They're frozen at the year the TIF district is created, and any of the new value that district generates from that point in time forward is set aside for specific projects that have been defined in a development plan. So we have a downtown TIF district, and we also have what's called the highway TIF district. And, there's very specific projects that the funds those districts generate can be used for, particularly, the downtown's got a really pretty detailed development plan. And it's the TIF district because of the increased value in the town generally, particularly, I think it was 2021 started to be much more lucrative. So that's a really good tool when we're talking about projects in the downtown to look to, the TIF financing. I'll talk about retiring debt a lot. So that's when we completely pay off the principal on a bond or a note. So that's going to be really important when we're talking about capital plans and the types of big projects that the town is interested in doing. We try our best to, carry a very sort of level debt so that people aren't seeing big spikes in property taxes from year to year. The reality is we've got some major challenges in regards to the age and condition of our infrastructure. So we are going to, in order to face a lot of those challenges, we're probably going to have to take on more debt than the debt that we're retiring in the years ahead. So that's going to be a really important conversation and discussion that we all have about what the priorities are around that and what is the level to which everyone's comfortable doing that. We'll talk about cost of living adjustments. COLA is the acronym for that. And that's really when wages are adjusted to keep pace with inflation. So the town has been using the Social Security Index, and it's whatever it is as of January of that year. We also talk about the unassigned fund balance. That's also the surplus. So we currently have about 2.6 million. Jody's probably cringing that I'm saying that because, that's like unaudited. Don't quote me on that. It could change. So the best practice is to have enough funding to sustain government operations for about 2 months. And we need about $2 million to do that. So our unassigned fund balance is really healthy. Also, when you look at some of our assigned fund balances, so that's, our reserve accounts where we've sort of dedicated money that we're saving or setting aside for a specific purpose, are also really healthy. All right, so I think this is really important too, because I think that, trying to control the tax impact is a very laudable goal. I really think it's important to know what you're up against in trying to do that as a municipal budget committee. So the mill rate or the tax rate's calculated by dividing the total municipal appropriation, so expenses minus revenue, and then the school and the county's appropriation by the town's valuation. So if you look at our current mill rate, about 23 million is what we need to raise through property taxes to pay for our portion of the schools, our county assessment, and all the functions of the municipality. So that's the total of what Camden spends on all of our, county, local, and school functions. So our value as a town is about, let's round up, it's about 1.7 million. So when you divide those numbers, billion, not million, billion. Yeah, we're way past the million point now. Yeah, right, exactly. So when you divide that, it comes up with our mill rate, which is about 13.8. And it's much more complicated. I'm really simplifying this just to be able to show you. 13.8 per $1,000 of value, and that's the rate that you're taxed at. So if, that kind of sets what your tax bill is going to be. If Carrie can talk about the assessing piece of this later. So how that's distributed, because like I said, the entire pie of what we pay for and what that rate pays for, it's about 62% is the schools, 7% is the county, and then the remainder of that, the 31%, is the town of Camden. So the budget that you're going to be voting on will account for about 30% of your tax bill. So to give you an idea of what that means in terms of if you really want to make sure that you're reducing spending or controlling spending, we have to cut about 13,000, it should be 13,800, or increase revenues by 13,800 to reduce the tax rate by 1 cent. And it just goes up, sort of incrementally. So to make real progress on, reducing the tax rate, which I think like $1 increase, most people would think is like significant progress. We're talking about 1.3 million in spending. So we pretty much wouldn't have a public works department anymore. So that, which,
It's not 130,000 million.
oh, yeah,
It's
1.38 million. Yeah. So that's just to give you an idea of like how, and I'm not saying to discourage anyone. It's a very laudable goal to want to control spending, decrease taxes. I guess my point being, you're 30% of that entire pie. So it's really difficult on the budget committee to do that.
Actually, it's $10 at the end, right?
What's that?
You table only 2 cents.
Assessed, well, the end is assessed value. like increases to the assessed value versus spending. Yeah.
I'm just trying, I don't know.
Just go, yeah, maybe just review it before it gets distributed.
Yeah, yeah. When we send it out. I think I left out as zeros. Okay.
But that said, 30% is still 30%, which is still important for the town.
Yes. All right. So some of the things that I think are really important coming up. So like I said before, we haven't started putting together a budget at all. We're really just, the purpose of these meetings are to give you information, explain to you, how what's the sort of outlook for different departments, how they function. So some of the challenges that we've already sort of flagged that we know going to the budget season, we're going to have to account for. The competition for municipal employees across the state and in our region it's really fierce. And in certain professions, it's way more fierce than others. So I think that, any emergency services personnel at this stage, we're really just stealing from each other. And I hate to say that that's the reality of what's going on, but police officers, it's like nothing anyone has ever seen before. There are agencies offering people with absolutely no experience $30 an hour just to get them in, $30 to $40 an hour just to get people in the door. We've got a crisis. It's a national crisis when it comes to police. They're just not enough people entering the profession to replace the people that are leaving the profession. And it's really, really difficult everywhere. It's even more difficult in a state like Maine, where we have the oldest population and the highest proportion of retirees and, just a smaller amount of people participating in the workforce. So it's very difficult. In Camden, the housing crisis makes employee recruitment very, very challenging, and it's uniquely challenging here. So I have police officers who they'll drive through, maybe 5 other jurisdictions where they could be paid more before they get to the town of Camden. So in their 45-minute commute from wherever they live into the town of Camden, they could work for the city of Augusta. They could work for Kennebec County. They could work for Lincoln County. They could work for Knox County. They could work for the city of Rockland and get paid more than they could work for Rockport now and get paid more than what they get paid in Camden. And so the fact that people have to commute so far outside of the town to come work here is making it really difficult to find people. And I know that this is a challenge that the school district is facing as well. I've seen the emails about anybody know where there's housing for teachers. So it's all public sector employees are experiencing this issue. Emergency medical services costs will have to significantly increase this year. We have had a private sector emergency medical services provider for years now. And the reason why that service was so incredibly economical for the town of Camden was that it was split between providing 911 services for Camden, Rockport, Hope, and Lincolnville, and also doing inter-facility transfers with the hospital system. So, that meant that those ambulances were constantly running because they were transporting patients from, Penn Bay to maybe Maine Medical Center and also responding to 911 calls. The sort of, it was very economical, but the drawback to that was that sometimes the response times when there was a critical incident or there was a 911 call would be slower, or, maybe there were multiple ambulances that were needed and there was only one that was available. So they had to call in for mutual aid. So that service, it's no longer being utilized by the hospital. So that means regardless of what the town chooses to do, the cost is going to have to increase for us in regards to EMS services. So we're going to have a really good conversation about what that's going to mean in terms of what what the service is going to look like and what it's going to, what's going to be delivered for the town. And we've really been sort of preparing for this by, if those of you who were on the budget committee last year, we talked over the past few years about setting up a non-transporting first responder program. And that's been up and going. And so the question really will be, is the town going to commit to growing that, and what that looks like, and how are we going to stage that? So, that is going to be a big conversation. I'd encourage all of you to watch the select board workshop where the fire chief and other members of the fire department and folks who are already providing EMS services through the first responder program came and they talked about these challenges. I think it really sort of sets the stage for the discussion that we're going to have in the months ahead. Major infrastructure investment is necessary. So I talked about this a little bit, but our infrastructure is aging. It's not designed to handle the impacts of climate change. Mary Beth was at Rotary presentation where I talked about this and some of the effects that having just so much more precipitation is having on our sewer system, our stormwater infrastructure, and what that means for our infrastructure and what we need to do to upgrade it so it can handle this better. Also, a lot of it was built in the early 1900s, and everything has an end to its usable life. And unfortunately, not a lot of it there weren't many major projects to sort of replace this over the years. So we're coming up to a point in time where, a lot of this stuff it's at the end of its usable life all at once. And, things are what they are right now. And we need to make some, big choices on what our priorities are. And we need to invest in it because, everybody sort of takes it for granted when it's working, but when it doesn't work, everybody notices, especially when it comes to sewer. There's also a strong desire amongst residents for additional spending on amenities, beautification, recreation, and cultural services. So that needs to be balanced in all of this as well. So, the majority of the requests I say that we get on a day-to-day basis would probably relate to this last category. That's the majority of our complaints, requests. When we have people coming in, that's the thing that they really want to see. We really need to balance that, though, with the other things that I've talked about on the list.
I guess I have two comments on that. Other than it sounds like there's a Travel and Leisure magazine article coming out about all the beauties of Camden. So maybe we can distribute that as a reminder. But I guess this would be an area, not to be as funny, to hear from the select board when we get to those areas of like, out of those requests, are there priorities? So, because again, I'm looking at the first four and like, thinking about yes in terms of full-time resident and it being beautiful. So it'd be good if there are things within that bucket that the select board has felt, has risen to the point of being a priority. I think it would be helpful before we start to look at that. So.
Absolutely. So does anybody have any questions about any of this?
I'll try to. Could you, just the last thing that you were talking about, the beautification and all that stuff, where did that, you said it was like a survey, where did that come from?
Oh, I would just say the complaints, the requests, when we, just things that come into the office when people call up about things that they want to see or things that they're unhappy with or, things that they want us to do. I would say that, there's a lot, we had a huge influx of new residents after the pandemic. Everybody knows that. A lot of people, maybe this is the first time they've ever lived in Maine. So, they, and I'm not saying any of this to be, I'm being very serious about this. It might be the first time they've lived in Maine. So things like, weeds growing up in the cracks of the side, like between the curbing and where the pavement is. That's kind of like a fact of life here. But for some people, that really bothers them. So I get a lot of calls about things like that. So yeah, it's just deciding like, okay, what's the level of priority? The snowplow in the right of way. I can't even tell you how many calls we get about the snowplow dug up my lawn. And it's like, well, that's not your lawn. It's the public right of way. But they want us to restore it to this highly manicured landscaped level. I mean, we can do that if everybody decides that that's a priority and you'd like us to spend money doing it, but it's expensive. So I
Yeah.
think it's just everybody knowing what the level of service is, why, and making sure that it kind of, we're managing those expectations. I guess that's the point that I'm trying to make. We can't do everything for everybody, so we need to, we just really need to prioritize all of this really well.
Ray, did you have a question?
No,
Yeah, so again, I think just circling back to that, whether it's like frequent callers or I think just like distilling, like, what is coming in, if it's a handful, again, it just, yeah, what that actually is rising to the level of making fiscal decisions would be great.
Right. And I mean, and some of it, there'll be things that I bring in front of you and maybe it's just for the sake of having a conversation about it and saying, hey, I'm getting a lot of complaints about this thing. As a group of citizens, do you feel like it's a priority? Because that's really important because then I can tell people that call in and ask about these things. Well, we talked about, the budget committee talked about it, but it just can't be a priority in the scope of all the other things that we need to, fund. So I think that, that's a really important role that you all play as a sounding board for those sorts of things and what's a priority and what isn't. All right. So I want to go into this a little bit because I didn't go over it last year and I regretted it because every other year I had. And I think just in the rush to get all this information out to everyone, I didn't get to go through it. So when it comes to things like employee benefits, the decision-making authority is really spelled out in the charter and the personnel policy. So the personnel policy identifies that insurance and retirement benefits that are offered to employees. So that's laid out when people take a job here, they get a copy of the personnel policy so they know what they can expect in terms of the benefits that they're entitled to as an employee. So the insurance and retirement benefits for police officers, it's done a little bit differently. It's negotiated as part of a collective bargaining agreement with the town. So with the exception of police officers, everybody else, their benefits are laid out in the personnel policy. So the select board has the authority to review, things like employee contribution to health insurance and also choose our insurance carrier. So we've been with the Maine Municipal Health Trust for a long, long time now. And really that's, if you're a municipality, that's the best deal that you can get because your risk is pooled with, I think it's like 478 different municipalities and quasi-municipal entities across the state. So, we're a rated group now. So because we have enough employees, 25% of the premium that's assessed to the town is based on our own employees. They call it experience, but it's how much have our employees used our health insurance in the past year. And then 75% of our premium is determined by that broader pool of people from all over the municipal employees from all over the state of Maine. So that helps buffer us against, if we have a year where, we have employees that have, expensive health issues.
Quick question. I don't know if Jody knows the answer or not. How many total employees does the town have? Town employees?
Full-time?
Well, yeah, give me full-time and then, yeah.
It's
About
between
6.
Because I know there's a lot of part-time ones in Snowball.
60 to 65.
60 to 65? Okay, thanks.
All right. So when it comes to compensation, Article 10 of the personnel policy kind of sets up that employees are paid based on, a step and grade plan that we need to maintain or that I need to maintain. And that's applicable to all full-time employees. So we have a wage scale that it's set up with comparable public and private sector work in not just the geographic area, but now we look across the state because there are some communities that are, better comparisons to Camden for a lot of different reasons that might not be in the local area. And, the goal is that we have a plan that keeps us competitive so that we can attract and retain well-qualified people. So the select board has the authority to review the compensation plan, but again, it's all spelled out through the personnel policy. So I just wanted to be really clear. The budget committee is not a personnel committee. So, whereas I think it's important to know about this for context, and it's important when you're considering things like talking about increasing services and bringing on new people and having an idea of what the impact is going to be on a long-term basis, you don't need to get into the weeds of employee compensation for everybody that's here still. Your goal is to talk about levels of service and whether or not you think that the services that you're getting are adequate. Are we offering too much services in one area? And then that's when we talk about, well, what are the staffing needs to accommodate those levels of service?
So Audra, one thing we talked about at our debrief a few months ago, and again, I'm looking at Jody because I would not want to give you the pangs of it, but we talked about, again, because I think everybody felt frustrated with spending lots of time, thoughtful time on discussing areas where we're not actually empowered to make a recommendation or have it potentially be adopted or not, or what have you. And so I think when we talked about from just aesthetically, from when you're looking at the budget, if there is a way in terms of highlighting within each of the budgets, those areas in which that are relevant to what we're talking about, and those that are there for the purpose of they have been set or are set, and and that are relevant to the total numbers, but not part of what we're talking about. I think that would be helpful, because I think, again, unless there's a discussion on the table of it, that it should be part of our discussion, but I don't think that's where we're at. But I think that will help just like hone in on what we're discussing.
Definitely. All right. So I'm kind of done with, just sort of the overview stuff. Does anybody else have any questions as it relates to any of this, or, anything else that, you think would be helpful to cover in the sort of next few meetings we have, which is background information?
Well, just backing up on what just said, on the budget, okay, as far as identifying those areas that we really can't even change or make a suggestion to change. I would guess I was confused last year because I thought we were looking at everything in the budget that was presented to us. Everything from a new fire engine or whatever to additional employees. And, I think if it's going to be set up that way, is that, okay, we can look at it, but we're not going to be able to make any recommendation that's a change. Will be helpful for us to know ahead of time. I'm not sure I agree with it, but.
Right. I would say that like the new FTEs is a good part of that, because
Yeah.
some of the, potential expansion, things like that. I mean, so where is that line?
Right. Like
Where
yeah.
and I don't know if it's written in the code of Camden conduct or, the bylaws or whatever, but where is that line for thoughtful discussion of what service and growth looks like versus compensation? And again, sensitivities of just like having those discussions.
Yeah. And I think, what we can do a better job of doing is, like you said, going through and sort of flagging those areas, like, for the purposes of discussion, when we get to like the EMS budget and we're talking about, okay, we're proposing to bring on X amount of new people to expand the program. Being able to, sort of highlight that in the numbers and give a breakdown of what that looks like, I think probably would be helpful in flagging stuff like that. But I also think, just sort of getting in the mindset of levels of service and really, and I think that's why doing this sort of overview of what the different departments are and what they do, having that conversation about, okay, this is what they do. Is it meeting the need? Can you see additional needs? Are we spending too much time on something that you don't believe is a need in the community? All of those discussions are really important because they are going to have an impact on, like we said, as a service delivery organization, the levels of staffing that we need to have for any particular department. So Whereas you're not looking at like the compensation of individual employees, you are looking at what are we delivering to the community, and what are the level of resources that we need to do that. So I think it's just keep in mind, you have like a higher level focus.
Yeah, but I do think it's worth noting. I think it's worth noting and recognizing and revisiting that levels of service equal FTE headcount, equal shared resources, equal, fair compensation, which again, we're not saying those numbers, but I just think, again, maybe it's like at the top of each session, we kind of flush out what is fair game and is not, because if I remember one year we said, we have all this attorney needs, we need someone allocated here, or so I just think that I think recognizing and acknowledging that there has to just be a called out, point in each area, because it's impossible. You can't completely separate them out.
Right.
What we're not going to be doing is scrutinizing. And again, all the ill will and things that occurred last year were unintended consequences of us only having pieces of information and not knowing kind of all of the back pieces, which we wouldn't have. So I just think it's not going to be like it's off the table, be done. So maybe don't color code yet, Jody, but I just think calling out of what those things are, so we could just be proactive about it versus otherwise.
Absolutely. All right. So anything else before we sort of move on to department related stuff? No? Okay. All right. So I've passed out a number of, I was hoping that I could get them all down to 1 page each, but it was pretty impossible. So this is just sort of like an overview of, and today we're just going to focus on, a lot of the departments that sit within town hall. So, like my office, the finance department, the planning codes development office, and assessing, just to sort of go over so everybody's got the full sort of background on what we all do, and, some of the things that we see as, areas of concern into the future, and some things that would be, I think good discussion with the budget committee. So I don't really want to go through and read every single bullet point, because you all can do that yourselves. But I think, with my office, really there's just two full-time equivalents. So it's Janice and I, and we're responsible for all the services that we've sort of outlined here. And just to give you a high level of that, that's, all the things that we do in terms of, the interdepartmental planning and coordination, and also some of the things that are specific to our department, like managing special projects. Janice is also the general assistance administrator. We're responsible for all the communication. So that's like managing the website and social media accounts and communication with the media, any noticing of meetings we do, all of the administration for the select board, all of the licensing business licensing administration for the town, that kind of stuff, making sure compliance with local, state, federal laws. There's a kind of, that's the scope of things that we do. So I guess, some of the discussion points with all of this that, I'd like to talk about with all of you in relation to, my office and the work that Janice and I do. Again, it comes back to that sort of balance of, the select board and the community's vision and expectations, and how we fulfill sort of our core municipal responsibilities and the constraints of having 2 people to do that. So I would say that, really when it comes to, vision, goals, desired levels of service, I kind of feel like it's starting to outpace the community's resources and the desire to pay for those services. And I think that, like I said before, I think that there's a risk that the focus on discretionary spending and amenities could take priorities over some of our bigger challenges when it comes to the core services like public safety and public infrastructure. So, those are kind of the things in relation to my department that I just really think are important to flag with the budget committee. Another thing that I hear about a lot, there's a real desire for, improved communication. And I've made the point to the select board that things like a quarterly or a monthly newsletter, Janice and I are kind of like at capacity with what we do already. So if we're going to, take on an effort like that, it would require more resources. I'm not saying we'd have to have a whole new position or anything, but we'd need some external help or funding to do things like that. So just kind of bringing it up as some of the things that have been raised already that, we've been asked to consider in preparation of the FY25 budget.
Yes, yes, just because, that's a
You gotta hit
really,
the button
oh,
for
I'm sorry. When I was talking to citizens as running for the select board, it was really interesting. And one of the things people asked for was a newsletter and all of that. And I said, well, who would do it? Who would pay for it? Knowing that that was a problem. And I'm always aware that we have this incredible retired intelligentsia of a community. And she said, well, I would volunteer. And I said, well, that would be like the best solution ever. And she had a journal, whatever. So it'd be coordinating. How can we better utilize a lot of really committed citizens that would do this stuff. And I would certainly volunteer my services for something like that because I care deeply about those kinds of things. How can we get people involved to share their resources? We haven't really focused on having people like that volunteer for those activities.
Great, thank you. So do you want to sort of go over finance stuff?
So my department consists of, thank you. I have 5 employees in the finance department, myself being one. I have a deputy finance director, who's also the treasurer, and the town clerk who's responsible for all vitals. She is also the registrar of voters. She's Katrina. You see her every election and whatnot. Tax collector, harbor clerk, that's a combined position. She's new. And she came on, hit the ground running, and she's doing a great job. And then our deputy tax collector, treasurer, clerk, who is, you'll see at the counter more often than the others. So basically, our department is tasked with collecting all money. We're the face. I feel like we're the face of Camden. We're who you see when you walk in. So we are collectors of the state fees, all taxes, vital records, death certificates, birth certificates. We report all that to and pay to the state and keep all bookkeeping for that. We are responsible for, let's see, what else do we do? We're mandated to provide an annual independent audit, which starts every year around this time. So, and it takes about 4 to 5 months, but we are required to report that. The state requires us to have that annual audit. Then we have to publish it in certain entities as far as to keep a bond rating, main revenue services, and let's see what else. We are required to file property tax liens, which is determined by the state. We have to follow certain statutes when collecting taxes. And so we follow through that and eventually through to a foreclosure, unfortunately. We respond to all general real estate, mortgage, federal, state inquiries regarding property taxes. We work with escrow agencies to facilitate all escrow payments through banks for those that don't pay their property taxes in person. Let's see. We were able to initiate the main online payport for rapid renewal to register your cars online. You can get your dog license. You can do pretty much anything online, pay your taxes. But just because we do offer that, it still comes back and we still have to do back office work. So it's a convenience to the town, to the taxpayers, and we're happy to provide that, but we still have that, the back office paperwork at the end of the day. Let's see. Just going down through this list. Of course, I work with Audra and Janice to start the budget preparation and work with Audra throughout the budget process to deliver that to the budget committee. We're responsible for accounts payable and receivable. For not only the town, but for the wastewater department and the snow bowl. I also do the bookkeeping for the Midco Solid Waste. I do the accounts payable, all state, federal reporting, and their payroll. I manage all the investment accounts for the trust funds. And let's see. Everything else is kind of spelled out in here. So that's kind of the gist of what I do.
Yeah, but I would say with, Jody, some of her big challenges, they're workforce related. There's a bit of a transition going on where, one of the employees is going to move over to another opportunity in another area of town. So Jody's got to recruit and train a new person.
Yeah.
And also managing, sort of like a long-term, absence amongst one of our employees. So those are really the main challenges for the finance department and the clerk's office in the year ahead. Also, we know that we have, at least one employee who is going to be transitioning into retirement. I don't think that that's a secret,
No.
Katrina.
Yes, no,
So-
she's looking forward to it. So
Yeah,
we're going to
yeah.
have a lot of changes in the next probably 4 to 5, 6 years. And maybe look at changing the structure of the finance office as far as duties and expectations of the staff.
Jody, quick question. You said that, I think I counted 5 people report to you?
4.
4,
Yeah.
okay, fine. And how has that changed over the last couple of years? I mean, say 5 years ago, how many reported into the finance director?
Same.
Same number. Okay, fine, thank you.
So any questions about the finance department? Yeah, no, our administrative departments aren't the exciting ones. Jeremy and Carrie, do you want to kind of come up and talk about codes, planning, and assessing?
You want the head of the table, Carrie? All right. Jeremy Martin, I think most of you all know me. And Carrie, we kind of have a unique situation in our office. Our budget's all lumped together. But we're kind of, I don't know, what would you say? We're
Two departments dependent on one another.
there you go. There you go. And we do have a combined total of 6 full-time employees in our office. There's myself and Carrie, and then there's a deputy assessor, there's a town planner, the code officer, and then there's an administrative assistant who serves assessing folks and code and planning and development. I don't want to go into great detail. I think I've been scolded before for talking too much.
Got the shepherd hook ready.
I think it was Randy last year, but
Yeah, no, it was random.
but so I put together the information that that you have, Carrie and I did, and I think we're mandated both assessing and code on the code and planning side to do certain things and provide certain services to the town by state law and even federal law. And that federal would be like the floodplain management ordinance. You have to administer and implement that. Shoreline zoning, comprehensive planning is mandated by the state as well. assessing.
Same is true with assessing. Everything that we do is mandated by state statute.
So yeah, fun fact with assessing. So Carrie's an agent of the state of Maine, really. So if anybody comes to me to complain that the assessor didn't do assessing duties properly, they can't come to me and expect me to reverse a decision that Carrie made, because he's an agent of the state and he's carrying out what's, defined by the state as the way that he has to do his job.
I'm responsible to the state tax assessor.
Right.
Yeah. And same is really true of the code enforcement piece as well.
Yeah.
Well,
Yep.
except for the ordinance.
Yeah.
But
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And I provided you some assumed outcomes and the mandates in here. We administer and enforce building, life safety, and land use codes. What code planning and development do. We provide support and facilitate the planning board and the zoning board of appeals. We do a lot of that. We manage, again, the land use ordinance that includes site plans, subdivision, shoreline zoning, floodplain, and then throw into there harbor and waterways, because I'm involved in that a fair amount. Our department is. And then we're obviously responsible for ensuring people comply, and that can be a challenging thing, especially when you're talking about people's private property rights. People cherish those, but we do have ordinances and laws that apply to people. So can be complicated, and it's very technical at times, very legal at times. So we do utilize Bill Kelly, the town attorney, quite a bit. Some things that we have done this year that I think are that we're engaged in right now. The planning board, housing has been a big issue, and it's up on Audra's list there. And I know Mary Beth's very interested in it and concerned about it, as am I. I originally kind of helped the Mid-Coast Housing Trust get off the ground, which has been a great organization. They're still young, trying to get their feet on the ground. But short-term rentals is a big issue, and the planning board is very concerned about short-term rentals and its impact on housing. I don't want to say affordability, but more availability in Camden. Affordable housing is certainly important, but housing availability in general is important. And so the planning board's been down this road with short-term rentals for well over a year, holding workshops on and off on it. And they are full steam looking at regulating short-term rentals in some fashion and limiting them. And they had a joint meeting with the select board on that. And peers came up, I think it was peers and the short-term rentals, if I recall correctly. So that takes a lot of staff time. They don't craft ordinances. It's very hard to do that. And that's where, I come in and Shenley comes in. And so we're working on that. It's a big lift, but I think it should pay off in the long run. And I'd invite everyone to pay attention to what's going on at the planning board level in that regard. And that's another tough one, because that's a private property rights issue too. And there's people that are operating them, and I don't think they want to be regulated or limited to doing that. So that will play out. And I think by June vote, we'll have something on the ballot. Maybe it has to get through the select board too. So hopefully we can do that. I've been involved in the pier moratorium. That's been a big thing in town. I'm going to give an update to the select board next Wednesday on piers. Something that takes a lot of time too is enforcement stuff. We've been dealing with one on Metcalf Road over by Lake Beach. I think people probably are aware of that one. That's coming to an end. Should be on Wednesday. Hopefully the select board approves a consent agreement on Wednesday. But that takes a lot of time. So there's a lot involved legally, and it can be very time consuming. I've been working recently with, there's a new nonprofit in town called the Friends of Curtis Island that are looking to restore the caretaker's house on Curtis Island, which is in dire need of some love and some TLC, probably more than love and TLC, to be honest with you. But I'm working with them now on that which is going to be a great project, I think. And I've been working with Beth and a group of people on Camden Snowball, trying to transition to the Ragged Mountain Recreation Area because we're envisioning that to be a 4-season, year-round recreational facility for folks. And Audrey and I have re-engaged with the Ragged Mountain Foundation on the lodge opportunity there. So we've got a lot in the works there. And then every month you have zoning board and planning board meetings when people are trying to do things with their property, and that requires a lot of review time from staff and guidance to the zoning board and the planning board. They're great boards, but they are lay boards, just like you folks are lay committee members, and you don't know a lot about zoning board stuff and how things go through, and what standards you have to apply, and it requires a lot of effort to make sure that those go smoothly, and smoothly is really goes smoothly legally, because oftentimes these things can get appealed, and there's, again, private property rights at stake. So people are very interested and need to make sure it's done correctly. What else? Big one is the traffic calming policy. The town, the select board, over about a year ago, adopted a traffic calming policy program, and my departments were the ones that are kind of the responsible for that program. We respond to those inquiries. We have 5 neighborhoods right now that have requested traffic calming. It's a big thing. It requires the police department goes out and they do traffic studies, they do speed studies. We get data on volume, we get data on speed. And then we'll be meeting with these neighborhoods to discuss what opportunities we have. And that's a budget thing, is, how do we fix this? Sometimes it might be just striping, new painting, street paint like we did on Norwood, but other situations there might be sidewalks needed or those kinds of things. So we are working on Lime Rock right now. We're working on Belmont Avenue. We're working on C Street. We're working on Hardin Ave. And now we're working on Rawson and Ames Terrace. And then I'm getting other calls from Rollins Road. It's kind of runs the gamut from very rural part of town that doesn't go anywhere except down to their end of the houses are at the end of the road, to connectors. So it can be very time consuming and complicated, but it is definitely traffic calming is something that neighborhoods are demanding, and they're asking for it. And we're providing that service that originates in our office. We kind of manage the process, and then we work with the PD and Public Works to implement that stuff.
I guess that's a good example of something that's sort of come up recently,
Right.
is just a crescendo of interest from neighborhoods in traffic calming.
Yeah.
And so, we came to the select board with a policy, and the policy was pretty general and high level. And then we're, rolling out the program. But when it comes to the point where the program needs to be funded, that's a budget committee decision. Right. So that's when having the conversation with you all about, is this something that is important and it should have a level of priority to it? And what level of priority is that? Are we looking at things like, maybe the budget committee feels like, okay, some of the smaller interventions like striping and increasing our paint budget to do that would be appropriate, but you don't want to see speed bumps going in all over town because they're costly and, or they could be costly over time. Those are the kinds of things that we're going to need you to weigh in on throughout the budget process.
Yeah.
Ray, did you have?
No, I was just going to say, once you have one neighborhood who knows,
That's true.
they can get a hold of you
It's
about
true.
traffic calming,
Yep.
you're going to hear
Now
from
we got
every
5.
single neighborhood.
Now we
So
got
you should have
5.
kept that quiet.
No.
Does that include speed zones? Like this like 50 mile, like setting the.
No, we don't set speed limits actually, or set in the ordinance sets certain streets speed limits, but DOT has the responsibility to set speed limits for like Rollins Road. I'm getting a request to reduce the speed on Rollins Road. That is not something the town has the ability to do because it's a certain standard type of road. That's a DOT thing. LD 2003, which is a housing rule, the state legislature passed that, and that requires towns to facilitate, to change their ordinances to hopefully facilitate more housing. You'll see on the ballot this year, there's two pieces of that. There's three elements to that. There's density, there's affordable housing, and then there's accessory dwelling units. The planning board and staff tackled affordable housing and density, and that's what's going to voters this year. So we're still working on the accessory dwelling unit piece, which will go to voters in June. And the idea with that one, why we waited, was kind of it's a bigger issue, especially when you bring in short-term rentals into that. So we're doing that. I did apply for grant. You brought up public landing. I applied for a couple of grants. When I first came here about 6 years ago, there was people were just, chomping at the bit to get the landing redeveloped, especially after the T.Y. Lin report was done in 2000. I think it was 13. So I did, I applied for a grant with the Shore and Harbor Planning Grant Program with the Department of Marine Resources, and a climate action grant from the governor's office, climate resiliency program. And I was successful in getting $60,000 for that project. And that's going to hopefully provide construction drawings, so we have a shovel-ready project. And I know this town really loves to engage a lot of these issues and be involved. We're coming from the perspective of the T.Y. Lin report is is the guiding document to this, which engaged the community, had a lot of stakeholder meetings. And so we're kind of just going from that perspective and not reinventing the wheel, if you will. Another thing we've been working on is a sewer extension project to the Mountainside Community Co-op Mobile Home Park. I don't know if everyone knows, but the community, the park residents actually purchased the mobile home park from the prior owner. That was about 2 years ago now. They are in dire need of a sewer extension. They have, they're actually hauling sewage 3 times a day from the park with a truck to the wastewater treatment plant. It's not sustainable. And my fear, and the system is not well. My fear is that there could be a failure of their system. And what that would do to water resources. If something gets into a ditch, follows a ditch along to a stream, and then it ends up in the Megantic River. So
Since you just brought that up, how close are they to sewers?
it's about 3,000 feet, which is far. But we did get, along with the Mobile Home Park and Community Development Inc., I think is there, CDI, which is a community development outfit out of Massachusetts, which helps community parks like this. We applied for congressional funding. Earmarks are new again in Congress, and Senator Collins and Senator King worked it into the congressional earmark program, discretionary funds, or whatever they're called now, for $1.3 million to go towards this sewer project. I think that 1.3 is well under what we actually need. So I am in the process of working with a couple other entities that are working with the park to apply for other funding through Community Development Block Grant Program. And the state is eager to help. So they're interested in making sure that that project can move forward. So that's something I'm excited about. And it's, I think, something that the community needs. I don't want to keep going, Carrie, if I'm taking up all your time. Sorry. I did this last time.
I'm fascinated. I am always amazed at how many balls he's got up in the air. So on assessing, you're probably all aware that revaluation is underway. It's been for a while. We're in the last year of it now. When it's done, it will be assessed values as of April 1st, 2024. So the inspection process is nearing its conclusion, at which point we'll start the next phase. Actually, the next phase is entering data, which I think started today from all the inspections. And then the next phase after that is the appraisal process, and then the math exercise where we study sales and apply it across to all the properties. It's where the fun begins. One of the things that we're doing is undertaking a pretty intense, I hope is how it comes across, effort to try to educate people, to tell them what's going on, how it works, why it's happening, and what everybody's individual role is as a citizen. You know, when they're going to be find out, how they can make an appointment to discuss it and learn what. Anyway, the point is that what I find is that the more people know, the less upset they are, and so we're going to do everything we can. We have a website now, CamdenRebound.com, and we've been working on the information that we're going to put on it. Right now, it's got a pretty good base of information, but we want to get a whole bunch of PowerPoint presentations. So if somebody wants to learn about what a sales ratio study is, they'll be able to understand that that's our main tool and how it works. And we'll go on and on. So there'll be quite a bit of information on there. And our plan is to have it mostly populated by the end of November. So we're working on it. I think the most important thing, so that's what our current big issue is. And, you know, it's hard to say. One of the things that has changed, I was at a conference today, and one of the things we were talking about, a former director of the property tax division got up and spoke, and a former a guy who's now a town manager was an assessor. And they both talked about how much more regulation there is, how much more paperwork we have to do. Like last year when the stabilization program happened, we could do nothing else for about 4 months. And so everything that we should have been working on got pushed to the side because we had to do this. So one of the other things that I do is I work with the legislature, and I try to prevent those types of things from happening. Not successful last year. But we were able to get them to modify, and then they actually wound up repealing it. But now the idea is to try to get something else in there, because these are people who really need the help. And Audra and I have had some conversations about trying to come up with creative ways to provide tax relief to people who really need it. And so that's a priority between us that we're working on. And I guess the other thing that I'd like to say is that our main purpose is the fair and equitable sharing of the tax burden. And one of the things that this reval is about, and that we're always doing, is ensuring that nobody is being asked to pay more, and nobody's getting away with paying less than what their fair share is. And I think that's the modus operandi under everything that we do. So that's it. Any questions?
And everyone can always reach out, I think, to Carrie and I, and if you have questions about what we're doing or projects that we're working on, and not just you folks, but everyone in the community that should feel welcome to reach out to us.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right. So that's really all that we prepared for tonight. Sarah, did you have anything you wanted to?
I'm gonna, confer with Jill when she's back, but something that came to mind just in the new format and structure, and we're still 5 minutes under, which is awesome. So I'll wrap it up in less than 3 minutes. But I did think that unless there are those of you that attend or watch every select board meeting, I am not one of them. It's not personal, but I did attend the one that was focused on the EMS fire response. So it made me think that without giving us too much homework, there may be some very relevant select board meetings that we should surface to the budget committee as kind of in between homework to be able to watch, and just because there's so much rich background on those. So that's one that you mentioned already. There may be some others that would be worth with the department heads, if there are things that the select board and department heads think would be important and relevant in giving us some of that background, then that's things that we can look at, and maybe the links could be made available. So
Yeah, definitely.
I just think that would be a good in-between session due diligence for us. So
Yeah, I think that's a really good one, as well as the last, was it the last select board meeting or the one before that, where the police department, it was last meeting? Yeah, that's another one I think that would be important for you all to watch.
And also, there will be more input from the EMS committee that serves the local towns. In the meeting that we had last week, and the next one is in January, we've asked for the vendor provider to provide information that's timely, because it will be an increase for them to be sustainable. And we've asked that to be, I think January for that information, because that will be a change that will have to be accounted for. But we've
Yeah.
asked for that. So, that January meeting is also a public meeting, the EMS meeting that's on Zoom.
yeah, so again, so I think noting when they're happening, but also kind of just surfacing them for ones that we could, have to preview beforehand, just have an opportunity to see without again having it be the focus of when we're actually finally meeting to do that budget would be useful. So other than that, we did it. 3 minutes shy. We have next a date for the next meeting.
Yes. I think it's on the schedule. Let me just pull that up.
And I appreciate everyone's time and energy
Yes,
and
thank you, thank you, thank
attention.
Okay, so the next meeting, it's November 30th. And so that'll be Public Works and Wastewater. They'll make it very fun.
Awesome. And then
Yes. It is really interesting and worth a while.
And brand new.
And brand new. And a good example of why we invested
Yeah,
so much money in it.
yes.
Yeah.
So it's super interesting.
yeah, and Jill said she was excited, and then we'll go over action items. But
Before
go ahead.
we bring that one up, I'm thinking the select board has a wastewater workshop on the 20th. Maybe that would be more efficient if the budget committee came to that. Is it a Wednesday? Okay. 20th. No,
I
no.
can't hear you guys, by the way.
Oh,
It's a Monday.
yeah, it's a Monday.
It's a Monday.
so why don't we just do not now a follow-up of
Yes.
relevant potential meetings to attend, or if they're being recorded, what we can watch afterwards.
Yes.
That would be great. And then we can go over action items like email distribution lists and so on. And Jill said she's excited. I texted her. I know she was just like cheering on the sidelines that she's co-chair. So I let her know. That she is on the team. All right. Good night, you guys.
So much, everyone.